SCP-173 is an anomalous concrete statue that eliminates people by going in front of them and crunching their necks, which is definitely a rather unusual method of attack. Because of this, there are dozens of ideas about how to defeat it, the most famous of which is just to try and stand on top of 173 or piggyback it. So can SCP-173 reach you if you're on top of it? In this video, we try to answer this question. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel with notifications on so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, and we plan on exploring more interesting SCP-173 experiments like this one in the future. As we said, this is a very popular question, and there are quite a lot of theories about what will happen, most of which are quite funny to imagine. For example, that SCP-173 will become angry because it can't reach you and will begin spinning rapidly in an attempt to throw you off, and that in order to avoid this, one can simply strap himself to the back of it like in a man-sized baby carrier. Or that the statue will jump towards the ceiling and crush you from above. Some people even believe that this will make SCP-173 so angry that the statue will begin flying. As we said, all very funny scenarios. There is even an unofficial experiment log on Reddit that discusses this exact scenario. In this log, it is stated how a small girl is told to piggyback 173 and hold tight. The girl complies and the lights are switched off for 1 second, allowing the statue to move freely. When the lights are turned back on, SCP-173 appears to have moved, and the girl's hair is still moving because of momentum. The girl is unharmed, but complains of dizziness owing to the statue's rapid movement. Also, spiral tracks can be seen on the ground, which suggests that 173 also spun around in circles. But even though the scientists realize that they've confused the statue, they aren't satisfied with the outcome and decide to repeat the experiment. The girl climbs onto 173 once again and the lights are turned off, but this time they are turned back on after 5 seconds. Once again, SCP-173 is now at a different location and the girl's body and hair are seen briefly moving with momentum. And as expected, the statue's tracks are visible once again, but with increased amount and variation. The girl complains of heavy dizziness and nausea before failing to keep holding onto the entity and falling to the ground. However, it is also noticed that after the experiment, SCP-173 vibrates constantly for more than 2 minutes before stopping. This surprises the scientists because they have never seen 173 do something like this before, but despite of this, they decide to repeat the experiment once again. The girl reluctantly agrees to climb onto SCP-173's back once again, and notices right away that the statue is constantly vibrating. Despite of this, the scientists reassure the little girl that everything will be fine, and the lights are turned off, but this time for 8 seconds. However, after 4 seconds, the sounds of violent breaking, described as horrible and wet, as well as aggressive concrete scraping, are heard. The chamber's lights are immediately turned on, and SCP-173 is seen having its back laying against a wall that is covered with the girl's remains. To top things off, SCP-173 is also vibrating stronger than ever. All further tests with the statue are immediately suspended, but despite of this, 173 keeps vibrating for a few months, during which the speed at which it secretes the weird red liquid is 3 times faster. Also, after this experiment, SCP-173 began moving at a much faster speed during attacks, and instead of crunching people's necks, it began detaching people's heads entirely. So in conclusion, even though the piggyback strategy worked at first, the statue eventually found a way to counter it, and the scientists not only achieved nothing, but also made SCP-173 obviously very angry, given the fact that it started to attack people in such an aggressive and brutal fashion, and that it vibrated for such a long period of time. Well, this is a very interesting experiment log, and on first glance it seems quite reasonable, given the statue's behavior. However, we must not forget that this log is posted on Reddit and not on the official SCP Wiki. And as you are about to see, there's a reason why. The writer of this experiment log assumes that SCP-173 crunches people's necks by extending its concrete arms and twisting people's heads, which is why during the test, the statue wasn't able to reach the girl and subsequently became angry. But as it turns out, SCP-173 doesn't need to use its concrete hands, because in the official SCP Wiki, there's a document where a researcher analyzes the video feed of an SCP-173 attack, and the results are surprising. To begin with, the doctor conducts autopsies on a few of 173's victims and discovers no evidence of external physical trauma to the aforementioned subject's necks, as one would expect to find on someone that had his or her neck broken, which implies that the statue doesn't actually make physical contact with its victims. Instead, frame-by-frame analysis of the video feed shows that right as the D-Class blinks, 173 closes to within a few inches of the prisoner, while its concrete arms remain in their usual rest position. In the next frame, less than 1/1000th of a second later, the D-Class's head is turned upward such that it stares directly into 173's face, and the prisoner's eyes are open. And once again, the statue's arms haven't moved in the slightest. Shortly after, the D-Class collapses. The doctor then concludes that the D-Class expired due to a combination of trauma caused by the rapidity of motion SCP-173 inflicted on the person's head, and the severing of the spinal cord due to separation between the second and third vertebrae, and not physical torsion of the neck. So if SCP-173 doesn't use physical contact, then it must possess some form of telekinetic powers. This conclusion is also confirmed by another finding. It was discovered that after they expire, the statue's victims always have their eyes open and continue to track SCP-173's movements despite of not being alive. And of course, this isn't normal, so there must be some sort of invisible power that causes this. So it appears that SCP-173 terminates people by anomalously severing their spinal cord and quickly rotating their head using some form of telekinesis. And to be honest, this makes sense, because an entity with concrete hands couldn't possibly manipulate people's heads in such a manner, given the fact that concrete isn't an elastic material. But what does this mean for our little sit on SCP-173 experiment? Well, as we already saw, the statue is capable of telekinesis, and given that 173 can crunch the necks of people that are in front of it without physical contact, then the statue should be able to use the same telekinetic powers to attack whoever is on top of it as well. This also debunks a few other ideas about how to defeat the statue. For example, that if you lay on the floor, the statue can't get you. However, there is one more thing we need to discuss. Why does the statue only eliminate people that are in close proximity if it is capable of telekinesis? Why not terminate people more quickly and effectively by using its powers from afar without having to wait for someone to blink so that it can close the distance? Well, if we go back to the same wiki article we already discussed, we discover several hints as to why. We notice that SCP-173 rotates its victims' heads and opens their eyes before it terminates them, so that the victims look the statue right in the face, and that all of 173's victims also track the statue's movements after they expire. This can only mean one thing, that the anomalous statue is hungry for attention. We won't go into detail why, because we discussed this thoroughly in our Who is SCP-173 video, so go watch it if you haven't already. But in short, it's because the statue is an anomalous art piece whose goal in life is not only to eliminate as many people as possible, but also to be seen by as many people as possible. So back to the experiment. This perfectly explains why SCP-173 doesn't use its telekinesis from a distance, but instead moves right in front of its victims. And this also means that the statue will not eliminate whoever is standing on top of it right away, and will instead want to receive some attention first. And the statue's telekinetic powers aren't only limited to crunching people's necks, because on one occasion, SCP-173 ripped through a foot of concrete and dug through 7 feet of soil in order to breach containment. This means that if a D-Class actually climbed on top of 173, the statue would wait for the D-Class to blink and then would happily use its telekinesis to throw the D-Class on the ground in front of it. And even if, for some reason, 173 is only able to use its telekinesis on people that are directly in front of it, then it can still spin around and move rapidly until the said person falls off. In any case, when the person is on the ground, it will rotate the D-Class's head and brutally force his or her eyelids open, making sure it gets the human attention it desperately desires. And of course, a crunching sound will follow soon afterward, because it turns out that we've underestimated SCP-173, and it will take a lot more creativity than just sitting on top of it to defeat the statue. Let's just hope that the Foundation doesn't try this, because even though the Reddit experiment log was wrong, it could be right about one thing, that if we try such a cheap tactic to confuse the statue, this may actually enrage 173 and make it more aggressive than ever. So what do you think? Would the statue throw whoever is standing on top of it on the ground and terminate them in usual fashion? Or would the results coincide with the experiment log we discussed in the beginning? And would SCP-173 become angry? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this type of content, as we will be exploring more interesting SCP-173 experiments in the future.